So, if any of you have been following the death of George Floyd and the protests after, things are getting out of control. It is insane. You guys have to see this. So, the protests about George Floyd's death are spreading across the nation. As you can see, you have, they said protests erupt in at least 30 cities. Um, Protests started in Atlanta, then they moved on to, DC. You have San Jose, California. And here's the thing, a lot of these are turning into riots. At first, it was just Minneapolis, right? We saw it. You had peaceful protesters out in the street, and then the violent ones come in. They start burning down businesses, they start looting stores, all kinds of terrible, awful things. Well, this is now spreading to other cities. It's not just in Minneapolis anymore. They've already had full on riots in Atlanta, DC, New York, and LA. So, and Columbus, Ohio, too. Wow. So rioters in Atlanta attacked the CNN building. I'll show you guys that here in a second. And the officers who were attempting to protect it. CNN reports, and officer was down after being struck by an object. The condition of the officer is not clear. Atlanta rioters continued on by burning vehicles throughout the city. The Atlanta mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, had strong words for the people about rioting. In Washington, D.C., rioters were briefly able to breach the Treasury building before being taken down by U.S. Secret Service, according to CNN. They also, by the way, went up to the White House and were acting like they were going to, storm the White House. Show you that as well. In Los Angeles, rioters were fighting with police. They also, in New York City, rioters attacked police and police property. And as well in Columbus, officers are being attacked there. This is insane. These people are going crazy in all these cities, attacking businesses. This is different than protesting. I noticed CNN said 30 protests have erupted in different cities. Okay, this is beyond protesting. Protesting is, going out there, making your voice heard. This is people going out, causing harm to others, people's businesses, people's property, other people themselves. It is absolutely insane. So when you look at Atlanta here, they've now declared a state of emergency because it's gotten so bad. They issued the declaration after thousands of people started a peaceful protest that ended hours later with violent protests and parts of downtown Atlanta in flames. The order will expire after 72 hours and allows up to 500 members of the Georgia National Guard to be used to respond in Atlanta. This is insane. They're having to send the National Guard in because these people are just burning down these cities and going absolutely nuts. You can see they stormed the CNN Center, which is ironic. But I know there was a police department in there, but we'll read about it here. CNN Center, the cable network's Atlanta headquarters, came under attack Friday during protests over police brutality sparked by the death of an unarmed black man in Minneapolis. A large, peaceful demonstration erupted first in vandalism, then in violence. Cops used pepper spray, and then some in the crowd were seen smashing windows and defacing the giant CNN sign with spray paint. Down the street, a police car was set ablaze. This is absolutely scary. I mean, you see some of these videos, and these people are just like losing their minds, destroying, going absolutely wild. Over here in Oakland, you actually had a federal police officer shot dead and another wounded in the Oakland protests. As the protests, 2 federal officers in Oakland were shot Friday night, one of them fatally, as protests over the death of George Floyd roiled the city amid nationwide violence. So in this one, nearly 10,000 people took to the streets of California community, at one point stopping traffic, looting stores like Targets and Walgreens, and setting fire to a Chase bank. And for those of you just on audio only, since some of you here, I'm not going to pull up the videos here, but go up and look some of these up. They are absolutely frightening. Like, these people destroying these buildings and businesses. And additionally, we get to the White House. The White House had to go into a lockdown because unrest was spreading and people were, approaching the edge of the White House and demanding justice for George Floyd. I'll read about that here. The White House was under a brief lockdown Friday night as protests erupted across the country over the death of Minneapolis man George Floyd, bringing tensions to a boiling point and forcing one of the Twin Cities to issue a curfew while demonstrators clashed with police across the U.S. Fox News and other members of the press were immediately moved inside as the White House went into lockdown. A dozen reporters were said to be inside the West Wing. One of the protesters was later taken into custody by the Secret Service outside the White House Friday night. And here, like I said, it's just, you can see in this image, those of you just listening, it's people just crowded outside the White House, and they're yelling and screaming, and it just looks like it looks like a powder keg about to explode. It's wild. And you see all these things, and they're demanding justice for Floyd. They're supposedly out here protesting, demanding justice for Floyd. Now, first off, I want to point out that the officer that is responsible for George Floyd's death is in custody. He's been charged with third-degree murder and I believe second-degree manslaughter as well. They have taken him in. I think they set bail at around $500,000. So what do you mean by you want justice for Floyd? What in the process there is taking place that is not aligning with your idea of justice? Because we're going through the due process here. He's been arrested. He's been charged. They're going to set up the court dates for everything else and move forward with the prosecution. So it's very interesting. We're seeing demand justice for Floyd. It's almost like they're calling for his head out on the streets for him to be like handed out to these rioters, and they execute him right then and there. It's weird. Because it's being handled, but yet people are still upset. I've seen a couple comments where people will say, yes, he got a third-degree murder charge, but we expected a first-degree murder charge. Well, hold on a second. First-degree murder, if I'm correct, I think usually involves premeditation, and you got to account for what that scenario was. Did Derek Chauvin go in there planning to find him and kill him that day? Was that the sort of thing? These people are wanting things amped up. They want to kill Chauvin right there and on the spot. It seems like it's hysteria. And if you want to go through due process and have everything done correctly, I'm not defending this police officer whatsoever. I don't think what he did was right at all and should be punished. If he gets the typical sentence for, what happened, you're looking around 25 years, but that's still not going to make people happy. People will not be happy, I don't think, unless they were to, give him the death penalty. This is what the way they're acting and what they're calling for. But even then, if you did, they would still not be happy. They would still find something to be angry about and say that any other number of things, that this is just going to happen again and we need to overthrow the system. I don't know. These rioters are acting absolutely crazy. And you see people rioting like this, and it says they're going into Targets, Walgreens, businesses, and stealing money from the cash registers, stealing TVs, game consoles, clothes, anything they can get their hands on, and clearing the shelves in these stores. Again, you're holding a sign demanding justice for Floyd, but you're going out and you're stealing from other people. You're destroying their businesses, which destroys their livelihoods. And if you're a big name store, and you're the owner, no, it's probably not affecting you as much, but still, you're affecting everyone's job who works there. You're affecting your town because you're destroying buildings in that town. And family businesses, that's even worse. They have everything riding on those businesses, and you're absolutely wrecking them. And you're getting stuff for yourself in the process. It doesn't sound like you're demanding justice. That sounds like you're looking for an excuse to go out and steal all the crap you can and get a pretty penny out of the whole situation. Like, come on, be honest. And, well, you're telling looters to be honest. That doesn't really work, does it? So there's this weird standard. And yes, I understand some people are out there just trying to protest and make their voice heard and are doing it peacefully. It's all these other people that come in and completely wreck the place and riot like madmen that ruin this for the other people that are trying to do it the right way. And here's the thing, you're acting like people disagree with you on this issue of George Floyd. I don't see anyone standing up for the officer, Derek Chauvin. I don't see anyone standing up for him. Everyone's saying what he did was wrong. It was bad. You know, he's being prosecuted. This is moving right along. Everyone's like, okay, this was bad. We need to put him away. That this kind of stuff should not happen. No one is pro-police violence that I've seen. I mean, there's footage. You don't have to be in support of riots to be against the death of George Floyd. There were a couple guys that went and took their guns and stood out and defended some of the stores in Minneapolis that the riots were happening at. And you know what? They disagreed with what happened with that officer and George Floyd. They thought it was terrible and horrific, but they were still going to stand up and defend people's businesses, and people need to be able to defend their homes and businesses and all this. It's just an absolute like psychotic mentality. These people go wild and nuts, and the fact that it's happening in other cities and they're destroying these other cities and other people are getting shot and killed. How does this bring justice? Hurting all these people, what does that do to advance justice? Absolutely nothing. The justice was already happening. The police officers were fired. There was an investigation launched. He's now been arrested. The process is moving along as it should be, and you're out there yelling and complaining and burning cities down. Because why? Why? When justice is already happening. You'll never be happy. You'll never be content with true justice happening. You want to fight and make a scene until you get whatever it is you want. And I don't know, do you want people to hate each other, and do you want more violence to erupt? Because that is what you're pushing. This has been, racial tensions have been fed and fueled so much. It's like, honestly, it seems like the news media is sitting there with a gas can just pouring it on, day after day, day after day. Anytime you see a news article about one person wronging another, if the two people happen to be of a different race, you can bet your butt they are throwing that in there. Any chance they get, they're like, oh, that was a black guy, that was a white guy. Just so you know, is it relevant to the story? Might not be at all, but they're going to throw it in there because, hey, that gets them views and that gets them money, because throwing fuel on the race fire apparently is good for the business in their point of view. But you are turning people into wild, crazy, mad, insane monsters destroying cities. And you're just adding to the problem. And out of all the videos that are there, there's a lot I can show you, but I did want to at least throw one in so you can get a sense. These are freaking reporters that are getting harassed by the people that are protesting and run out of there, and they look scared for their lives. These people are stealing their equipment, coming up to them like they're going to beat the absolute living crap out of them. After everything that's happened, I'd be scared too, because these people are insane. Take a look at just a little clip here of what's been going on.
Hey, watch some shit. This Fox News reporter is getting chased out by the George Floyd protesters here in front of at Lafayette Park. Look, there's water being thrown on the reporter here. Hey, look, this protester just took his mic. And they just threw the mic at the reporter here. As you see, guys, things are spiraling here quick.
So if you are one of those news sources, or maybe you're just a person who gets online and feels that kind of hate, a lot of this is on you. That is morally corrupt behavior. That is an awful, sick way to behave yourself and act, to purposefully make every single thing about race and turn people against each other. Sometimes it may be, but you do that every single time, something is wrong with you, and you're creating way more problems than there need to be. And you should not feel good about that. So, thank you all for tuning in again today. Feel free to leave a like or subscribe. I know the news today is a lot more heavy, and there's a lot of bad stuff going on. And thank you guys for tuning in, and I just hope it doesn't affect your all's day too bad, and stay safe where you're at. We'll see you next time.